Hello and welcome. My name is Denzel Rodriguez, your personal finance geek of the 21st century. And in today's video, I have an idea that I'm working with. I'm calling it the Finance Geek Framework, a way for me to process the last 7 years that I've been on YouTube, all the financial wisdom I've been accumulating over time, working with thousands of people, helping thousands of people across the nation, and being coached and trained and learning from the best of the best in the financial space. This framework I'm going to lay out here on the whiteboard I don't think is fully complete, but what I do know it is an absolute well-established foundation that I believe anybody can begin to work on, and we're going to take this step by step to a staged approach. And I want your comments, I want your feedback, I want your criticism on the way that I'm processing, the way I look at money, the way I look at purpose, the way I look at life in that sense. And let's have some fun with it. So with that being said, let's dive right into the whiteboard here. A framework, something that I've said for the last 7 years, it's very important to know your 4 major numbers. So I will continue to lead with that. That is not something I've dropped. I lead with that on all my coaching calls. When I talk to anybody that wants to work with me, anybody that needs my help in the realm of finance, I need to know these numbers. I need to know where you currently stand, how much you got coming in per month, total income, net after tax, what are your total expenses. Everything that leaves your bank account is an expense, whether it comes out monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or annual. We need to know what that number is, and we can divide it by 12 if it's an annual expense, okay, or any other expense that doesn't necessarily come out monthly. We can divide it out monthly for the year to see what the true total cost of spending in your household is. Never going to be perfect, but we can account for as many things, and we can make our lives easier by simply overestimating what we spend, what we save, invest, all that, give, tithe, everything into our monthly expense number. Then we go to debts, everything laid out, total balances, interest rates, monthly minimum payments, all of it. And then we're left with cash flow. Money that's left over that doesn't yet have a purpose, or money that's left over that is simply getting spent somewhere and you haven't been able to track it. So understanding your 4 major numbers is something I will continue to preach. And it has to do with tracking. It has to do with becoming aware of opportunities and problems, challenges, obstacles before we talk any of this stuff. Before we get into making money and saving money and paying off debt and whatever it is that you want, we got to start there first. So that is ground level work. I got these 5 steps, 4 or 5 steps that I've been playing with in terms of how I work with clients. And it may not get accomplished in this particular order, so I understand that. But it is the way that I'm thinking. It's the first questions that I'm looking to solve for with the client, with you watching, which is, what is your purpose? Why are you here on this planet? Before we talk about how to make more money in this life and how to save and invest and multiply and start a YouTube channel and do all this fun stuff and vacation and travel, all that stuff, I want to know who you are. I want to know why God put you on this planet. I want to know why you're here. I want to know what your deep, burning desire, purpose is to live an abundant life. And the faster we answer that question, I promise you everything else falls in line beautifully. Because when you're in alignment with your purpose in life, you've got skills, gifts, and talents that are going to be, that are going to be expressed to its highest level, because it's the thing you were destined to do. It's the thing that you're great at. And I want to figure that out as quickly as possible before anything. So again, it may not happen right away. It's going to take some time. What I've been able to witness working with folks is that when they know their numbers, when we start implementing a strategy, when we start having the conversation of purpose, Because when's the last time somebody asked you what your purpose is? When's the last time you had a family, friend, sit down for an hour and a half, an hour, 30 minutes, whatever it is, and just genuinely be interested in why God put you here on this planet? What's your purpose? What are you supposed to be doing right now at 30 years old, 40, 50, 60, however old you are? What are you supposed to be doing with your life right now? Just having those conversations without having an answer right away opens up a world of opportunity. So I think that's huge. What's your purpose? Once I know what that is, I'm able to turn that into a business. A business, in my opinion, is the most efficient way to live out your purpose. It's the most efficient way. From there, building the habit of paying yourself first. This is could be considered a strategy. It could be considered a ritual, a habit, a way of being, a way of operating your finances. If you simply decide to pay yourself first when you receive a paycheck, you receive 100% of that income goes into your checking account, and immediately things go out. Immediately money gets expensed. Well, what if you automatically took money out of your paycheck and automatically set it aside for giving and for paying yourself to be able to build wealth to eventually replace that income? If we could build that model out, I think it would be amazing. Now, paying yourself first, there's going to be some pregame work that's going to be required to get there. And you can make an argument for paying yourself first may look like paying off your debt. So a lot of us that reach this YouTube channel that I've been able to build over the last 7 years is primarily focused on one of the biggest financial blocks most Americans face today, which is debt. So a lot of my videos are catered to helping you pay off your debt really fast, giving you the mindset, giving you the pregame work to eliminate that debt, recapture that cash flow. Once we've recaptured enough cash flow, we can then start to map out what are we going to do with this money now that it's no longer going to institutions. I'm now in control of this money. How do I pay myself first? How do I give more? When I apply those two principles, my income and my opportunities are going to explode over time. They really will. It's amazing. So paying yourself first, spend less than what you make, pay off debt, build credit. So again, not necessarily in order. These are just steps I want to approach. This is how I look at things. As you're paying yourself first, as you're tracking, as you're spending less than what you make, as you're paying off debt, all of that is happening, all of this is happening simultaneously when you're working with someone like myself, when you have a coach, when you have an accountability partner, to constantly have conversations and go over these things. So you're working on your purpose, which over time will be built into a business. You're working on paying yourself first. Maybe you start off at 1% of your check, literally goes into a separate account, and it just sits there. And it can grow safely at a guaranteed rate, preferably over time. And that'll over time replace your active income with different accounts. We want to pay off debt, because if we pay off debt, we come into control of more of our money. And if we build credit, we get access to more capital, which is access to leverage, access to opportunity. The pay yourself part, I have a little star here that says set aside enough money to set up your legacy and assets properly. If we can do it right the first time, you're going to be saving yourself thousands of dollars later on in life. So keep that in mind. As this is going on simultaneously, we're going to inject strategies to do these things. So this is me painting the picture for someone like yourself, a client that I'm working with, and then I'm injecting strategies that we could look at. So velocity banking, I want to summarize that as all debt elimination strategies. Debt snowball, debt avalanche, cash flow index, velocity banking. Those are the top 4 debt elimination strategies that exist. Infinite banking, we can throw that in there as a 5th, but I did separate it because it involves a product, whereas debt snowball, debt avalanche, cash flow index, velocity banking, they don't require you to purchase anything to then do a debt elimination strategy. Debt snowball, debt avalanche, cash flow index is purely based off of the amount of money you generate and what's left over, that discretionary income or cash flow. And then you're applying that in a certain order of debts that you have, whether it's smallest to highest, highest interest to lowest interest, or cash flow index, lowest number to highest cash flow index number. Then velocity banking doesn't require you to purchase anything. It's based purely off credit and access to acquire some kind of line of credit. HELOC, credit card, home equity line of credit, first, second, business line of credit. Infinite banking requires you to purchase a properly structured whole life insurance contract, which you then have to contribute money into that account, build it up, have cash value to work with, then borrow against that to then pay off debt at a later point in time. So it's a slower strategy, but over time you end up with actually more wealth. Okay, so different ways of looking at it. So those are strategies that I'm most known for on YouTube. That's probably how you found me. Something along the lines of velocity banking or infinite banking in the title. That's where most of the content that I've been discussing the last 7 years. So I typically lead with those strategies, those reel people in. I'm able to have more conversations with them. I'm able to open up their world with these two strategies because it's what initially attracted them. And then I get to spend more time with you personally, one-to-one or in a group setting, and we begin to open these things up. On top of strategies, Deuteronomy 28:12 talks about lending unto many nations. So it's the idea of, instead of you being a borrower your whole entire life, what would it look like to be a lender? That is a strategy. And then ultimately showing you how to own nothing in this life, but control everything that you acquire through assets and income and passive and guaranteed and all these different things. How do you take it all out of your name? Because when you die, you leave with nothing. So the more assets, the more material possessions you acquire over this lifespan, by transferring it out of your name, out of your control, lowers your tax liability and increases control over your life, and you get to live an intentional life, an abundant life, and be a cheerful giver. So that's a strategy in and of itself. This is something I've, learned over the years. Yeah, how do I, own less things, but still have control over those things, material possessions, assets, reducing my tax liability, which increases more cash flow, which increases more wealth into my control. And finally, build your financial dream team. Everything that I just said requires people to make all this happen. Other people other than yourself with other skills, gifts, and talents that you can leverage at a cost and recruit those people onto your team to shorten the time it would take you to learn all of this. So there's something called the ignorance tax, something that a gentleman by the name of Alex Hormozy often says. He's like, there's an ignorance tax to everything. If you stay ignorant in an area, it costs you money when you are presented with an obstacle or a challenge and you don't know how to solve it because you don't know what you don't know. And now you're met with someone with experience and you try to fight it with money. The person or organization with the experience will leave with the money. You'll leave with the experience, good or bad. The fastest way to get past the ignorance tax is to simply pay a professional to help you through it so you don't do it alone. Instead of trying to throw money at a problem when it arrives, you do preventative care by enlisting, recruiting, enrolling a coach, a consultant, a financial advisor, a professional, an attorney, a CPA, a real estate investor, a business coach. You can find these people online today. You can find them in your local area where you live through different social media platforms, through even chambers of commerce in your local area and with the local government. There's all just social networking to find and build this financial dream team. So that's a concept and a strategy in and of itself, is to build your financial dream team as you're learning and absorbing new information about your personal finances. Moving right along to this part right here, which is a 3-part system that is coined by a gentleman named Mark J. Kohler, and he calls this the tax trifecta. It's broken up into 3 parts. Part 1 being a foundation, establishing a revocable living trust where you're gonna have income and assets flow in and out of this trust. A revocable living trust is phenomenal for the vast majority of Americans that are not super wealthy. So for the vast majority of Americans, generating under $1 million a year should absolutely look into acquiring a revocable living trust. And that can happen very early on, whether you have a business or not. So he talks about this tax trifecta. Part one is establishing the revocable living trust. And there's some other documents that go with that: a will, power of attorney, healthcare directive. It's a couple other very unique documents that you're going to want to have. Part two is your operations. Left side of the column is how you make money. So we all make money W-2, 1099, or through a business, LLC, S Corp, C Corp. In this example I'm using myself, I have an LLC that's taxed as an S Corp. I have a W-2 through my business. My wife has a W-2 income. I have 1099 income. And over time, what I'm going to be working on is moving my S Corporation into my revocable living trust. And then over on the right-hand side, which is part three, which is assets, there are, and this is where this becomes a little more customized to my approach. If you watch his channel, he'll have other things in here. But this is my personal approach for what I'm trying to solve for according to my purpose and according to the strategies that I'm implementing. So for me, when it comes to paying myself first, when it comes to saving money, I use properly structured whole life insurance contracts on myself and members of my family, key members of my family. My life insurance policies will not be owned by the trust. There's no need, due to the fact that there's a agreement and contract that's guaranteed where I have beneficiaries that will be able to receive the death benefit of that whole life insurance contract completely tax-free. So there's no need for me to put that in this trust when the heirs can just receive it completely tax-free. That's my current perspective right now. Now, I do believe that if I continue to make the kind of money I'm making and increase, that eventually over time, what I think will be established is a separate trust where the life insurance policy would go into. And I believe there's going to be some strategic moves there in terms of avoiding a certain amount of tax that can occur when you build a massive estate. So just know that this framework is not end all be all, and it's also not firm in terms of does it stay the same throughout your whole entire life. Absolutely not. I don't think that's the case here, especially when it comes to just a revocable living trust. I believe the more wealth you accumulate, there's going to be other things that you're going to want to graduate into and look into, like charitable remainder trust, and then there's dynasty trust, and there's all kinds of different names that would eventually get added on. But think of this as a foundation, a starting point, where I said the vast majority of Americans making under $1 million a year could start. So under $1 million covers like 90% of Americans, 95+% of Americans. You don't have a revocable living trust, that's a great place to start. And then the other documents that come with it. So whole life insurance is a savings vehicle for me. It's an emergency fund. It's an opportunity fund. It's a liquidity account in case I need it to handle something like an emergency. I'm able to borrow against that cash value, handle the issue, and my money keeps growing tax-free at a guaranteed rate plus non-guaranteed dividends for the rest of my life. Plus it comes with living benefits, plus it comes with the death benefit in case anything happens to my life. On top of that, the next account, in terms of assets, there are certain kinds of accounts that you can add into your financial portfolio, and then there's the assets that you buy. So there can be tons of assets that any individual could buy, but from a tax perspective, you want to ask yourself, does it make sense for me to buy this asset under my name, Denzel Rodriguez, or does it make sense for me to buy this asset inside of this account that's owned by me and comes with a tax advantage? That's what you want to ask yourself. And then you also want to process if this asset is a long-term asset. For me, I think about, are taxes going to go up or down in the future? They're probably going to go up. Do I prefer to have tax-free income or taxable income? This is a values and beliefs question. And a preference question. I personally, Denzel Rodriguez, prefer to have no tax in the future and have tax-free income in the future. So there are 3 accounts that help me do this: whole life insurance, HSA account, and a Roth IRA account. So for me, whole life insurance is where I save a majority of my income. I try to save 40% of my income every single year, and I store that in various properly structured whole life insurance contracts. Additional money that I have, cash flow, that can be invested. Instead of me getting taxed on it, I can take some of that money and put it into what's called a self-directed HSA. As an individual, you can fund $4,300 in 2025 as I'm recording this video, and could be as high as $8,550 if you're married, okay? So I have been funding a self-directed HSA account for nearly 7 years. I get a tax deduction off my income today, which lowers my tax liability. My money grows tax deferred inside this account, so I don't have to worry about filing on capital gains and all that stuff. So it grows tax deferred inside of that HSA. And once I reach 59 and a half, afterwards, I can withdraw that money tax-free 2 ways. For qualified medical expenses, I can draw money out of that account completely tax-free. And all qualified medical expenses from my current age, 23 years old is when I started the HSA, all the way to 59 and a half. I'm currently 29. So all those years of funding, 23 all the way to 59 and a half, let's just say I spent $200,000 on qualified medical expenses, and the HSA has grown to multiple 6 figures, maybe even $1 million. Well, now I can take tax-free income as a reimbursement for all those qualified medical expenses that I came out of pocket for. So it's a triple tax benefit. That's insane. So that's part of my right-hand side asset column of my whole entire framework of where I first store money and then decide what I would invest in. So self-directed HSA. The next thing that I'm working on is a self-directed IRA that I would set up where I can contribute dollars into, but then roll those dollars into a self-directed Roth IRA account where you can contribute anywhere from $7,000 a year up to $8,000 if you're above 50. So in my case, it would be $7,000 a year. And because I'm married, I can do 7,000 times 2. So my spouse can also contribute to a self-directed Roth IRA by establishing a self-directed IRA first, because we make more than the required amount for Roth IRA. So to get around that income limitation, you would set up a traditional IRA, self-directed, put the money in there. You're lowering your tax liability, your taxable income for that year. So you drop, but then you roll that money, pay the taxes, I believe, at that lower tax bracket, if I'm not mistaken, could be wrong there. Now that money is growing tax-free forever in the Roth IRA. So we got, say, $14,000 plus $4,300 plus 40% of my income all being saved in tax-free accounts. When it comes to additional money on top of that, I will put it in real estate. And the real estate will get stored in trust to have additional layers of protection. And because I don't need the cash flow, I'm going to keep the cash flow inside of the trust, keep it flowing, reduce tax liability, operate my business over here, and keep generating the activity income that needs to be created into passive income vehicles, do the business, and continue max funding these different accounts. So what I'm personally working on is establishing the self-directed IRA, self-directed Roth IRA, going to be contributing $14,000 a year. I'm going to work toward that number. I'm already doing the whole life and the self-directed HSA. I've built a financial dream team around me to help me do all of this. So to learn more about that tax trifecta system, go to Mark J. Kohler's YouTube channel. You can learn that. I'll even have a link below where it'll take you to his information and all that good stuff. I think what he's been doing is pretty amazing. He's got a long track record, 20 plus years of doing this for folks. So I trust him, his reputation and credibility on that standpoint for this side of the board. For working with me one-to-one is on your 4 major numbers, coaching and accountability, me stepping in, building your velocity banking strategy or your infinite banking strategy or your Deuteronomy 28:12 strategy and the own nothing, control everything strategy. That is what I've been slowly building with clients one-to-one, and while simultaneously doing it for myself over the last 7 years. And that is the Finance Geek framework. Again, it's not perfect. It's being built. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you have anything that you think I should add in here or other things to consider. Again, if you go too high level, then obviously that's higher level. But if there's something that you think I might have missed as a ground foundational work, let me know in the comments. I think that would be great to help me see something I might have missed here. And with that being said, again, my name is Denzel Rodriguez, personal finance geek of the 21st century. I do one-to-one coaching, group, got courses, things that you can get started even if you're making little dollars. I have all kinds of pricing options that make it super affordable to get a hold of me one-to-one. Imagine that. I go as low as free. Go figure. Where you can at least start the journey, and then we can figure out how we can continue that relationship to hold you accountable toward your goals. Have a wonderful day. God bless. We'll be talking.